threatening us a bit. Bring your accounts in order. So like that, we go to an office, they'd say, so sit and wait for, a while. You wait for an hour, and then they might tell you, come back next week. And it would go on day after day, week after week. You'd just be running, what they call the runaround in India, without much success. So I also find it, a bit dry, just that kind of management. In England, we used to be able to go on Sankirtan, go on preaching programs, even while managing, but it was a bit more compartmentalized here. So I started taking devotees out on Sankirtan to the nearby suburbs, like Villaparla, Santa Cruz, and doing Sankirtan and distributing small books. But Giraj actually told me Prabhupada wasn't so keen on devotees at that time going on the streets. He didn't want devotees to be seen as beggars. Rather, we went to programs with Srila Prabhupada in like Beerless House and houses of different gentlemen. So in that way, he preferred to cultivate the wealthy people. Once he asked me, he called me in his room and he said, what do you like better, temple management or book distribution? And I answered, book distribution, Srila Prabhupada. He said, okay, he said, you manage this temple for some time. He said, and later he said, I'll show you how to distribute sets of my books in all the universities and libraries. So I continued on with the service, but find it a bit of a struggle, and I was being asked to go back to England. And then Prabhupada had heard about that. He called me and he said, I heard you want to go back to England. He said, don't go. He said, you're needed here. So I had to continue and stay. But he did say, if you can find a replacement, then you can go on preaching. So then in 76, Mayapur, Jaitirtha became GBC in England, and he wanted me to come back, and Mahavishnu wanted to come to India, so arranged a deal. It would be a swap. But when Mahavishnu came, just at that time, the library party representatives came to train the devotees in India, and they convinced him to go. Those days, the leaders would just, preach to one another. They convinced devotees to leave their temple and go to their own temple. Jai Maharaj used to come here and preach to me, come to Mayapur. But anyway, Mahavishnu was taken by library party, so then I had to look for someone else who could replace me. And I found Amoga had gone on the library party, but his wife was here in Mumbai, and he wasn't too happy about that. So I proposed him, let's swap. So he agreed, and he became manager, and I was able to go on the library party. But Giraj asked Prabhupada, surely we have to send someone to England. That was the agreement. Prabhupada said, never mind. He said, Mahavishnu has come, and Mahavishnu is supposed to go back to England. Prabhupada said, never mind. He said, there's so many devotees in England, let them both stay here in India. So I got to go on the library party then for about a year. It was a very inspiring experience. And we met Srila Prabhupada in many places. He would always ask about how many sets of books were distributed, what the professors are saying about my books. After about a year, we started going to neighboring countries, one of which was Bangladesh. I thought it would be good to open a temple there, and I came to Mumbai to meet Srila Prabhupada. At that time, he had moved into his new quarters. I wanted to ask permission to go to Bangladesh, but our library party leader, Gargamuni Swami, had made an arrangement with Prabhupada's secretary, Tamal Krishna Maharaj. Don't let me into Prabhupada's room. He didn't want me to leave the library party, so Tamal Krishna Maharaj told me, you need a letter from Gargamuni, then you can meet Srila Prabhupada. Well, I couldn't get the letter, but Hansaduta happened to tell Prabhupada that I was interested to go to Bangladesh, and the next day, I was in the servants' quarters, and the door opened, and Prabhupada saw me from his sitting place, and he said, come in here. So I came and offered my obeisance. He said, you have made the right decision. He said, go to Bangladesh immediately. And he gave me some instructions that we were trying to get the Gaudiya Mat there for ISKCON. We didn't get it, but we got a better place in the end. But anyhow, that's a couple of incidents that happened. And one other thing, I'd just like to relate. On Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's disappearance day in the end of 75, the devotees wanted to cook, especially pujaris and cooks wanted to cook 108 preparations for offering to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. I asked Srila Prabhupada, is this the right way to observe the occasion? And Prabhupada said, just cook 5-6 preparations, but cook in very, very large quantity and distribute to everyone. In the end, the devotees also cooked 108 preparations and brought them all up to Srila Prabhupada's room. But we can see his mood that whenever there was an opportunity to preach big, he would take that opportunity. And it was very nice this morning to see the vehicles loading up with so much prasadam to go out and distribute to the public. It was one of Prabhupada's favorite programs. In fact, every night after Kirtan, the last program would be the last artik. Everyone would take part, and then there would be khichdi distribution. Prabhupada was very insistent on that every day. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Prabhu Vishnu Prabhu ki jai.
Every speaker gets a little memory card, postcard. You were speaking a few minutes ago, the photograph was taken. You could go home with it.
Thank you very much.
This will happen to all the speakers. At the end, you will get one. Oh, your teeth now. Good. Now you could take a photograph.
Hare Krishna. So our next panel is, or the next presenter is a panel of devotees who were involved in the construction. So in this group, we have His Holiness Gopal Krishna Maharaj. And we have Vijay-Prabhu. Vijay came here and joined the construction team and is working with Saurabhi and other devotees on construction. Shankar Prabhu was very much involved in the creating the gardens from when, long before the temple was created, and then joined the construction crew. Has a lot of memories of that time. And then also Brijmohan Sethi Prabhu, who, yes, right here, come. So Brijmohan Prabhu and his father actually constructed the small temporary temple between the time that the deities were sharing the hut that we all lived in. That was not the original intention. Originally the deities were to move from the pandal in the field into a temporary structure, but because of all the problems, legal problems, we didn't have the title, therefore we couldn't get permission to create new construction. And so the deities went into the hut. We'll talk about that a little later. So then when we did get permission and we had the title, then we wanted a temporary temple for the deities, and Mr. Sethi and his son Brijmohan, they constructed that temple for Shri Shri Radharasa Bihari, and that remained their home until the new temple was opened in 1978, 40 years ago. So Gopal Krishna Maharaj is going to speak first about the years leading up to the construction relating to design and either other factors. Yeah, thank you, Maharaj.
Hi. Hare Krishna. Is this all okay?
Yes.
Wonderful. Oh, Hare Krishna. So I came to India at GBC in March 1975. And I had just finished offering, I had not even finished offering my obeisances to Prabhupada in Mayapur, when Prabhupada said, you have to complete the Bombay project in 6 months. But then, at that time, the land was already in ISKCON's name. Prabhupada had already won the battle. And the next challenge was starting construction. And to start construction, you needed a certificate called NOC or no objection certificate. Now, as you know, we had a lot of opposition when Prabhupada was trying to get the land. One of the reasons why we had opposition was the owners were planning on selling this land for a commercial hotel development. This area was becoming commercialized with hotels. And we had a local municipal councillor called Pushpakan Matre, who would oppose, have people send letters, Kirtan is a nuisance, and so on. So getting the NOC, I believe there was some NOC obtained previously, but I think it got cancelled. Because when I came in March, it was clear we didn't have NOC. So that was our first concentration. So Giriraj Swami and I started meeting important people, important politicians, and our search for help took us to one Mr. P.K. Sawant, who was the president of the Maharashtra Congress Party, and who was a Marathi scholar of repute, and also a pious man. So I don't exactly remember who took us to P.K. Sawant, but we ended up over there, and Pushpakan Matre was also a councillor of the same political party. So we spoke to Sawant, and he was quite impressed with our cause. And at that time, in India, there was a state of emergency. Indira Gandhi had lost the elections, and she ordered emergency. So in emergency, the ministers had a lot of powers. There was no going to the court and all that. So P.K. Sawant took us to S.B. Chavan, who was the then Chief Minister of Maharashtra. He was a nice, honest man, and we gave him our story and told them how the plans are not being passed. So S.B. Chavan was finally convinced that our case was genuine, and in front of us he called up we were getting objections from two sources. One was the police commissioner of Bombay, and the other was the municipal commissioner of Bombay. The police commissioner was saying, creating too much nonsense, the kirtan is very disturbing. So anyway, the Chavan was bold enough to speak to both of them, and he told us, okay, now you'll get the NOC. So after many, many rounds, I mean, that was our daily routine. We would take a bus to Andheri station. We all had train passes. We didn't have any cars at that time. There was no car even for Prabhupada. Is that right? We would take the train to Churchgate. And Sachiwala was like our residence. We would see the different bureaucrats. And finally, I believe in June or July, I think Prabhupada was in America, Hawaii or somewhere. We sent him a telegram that NOC obtained. So after we got the NOC, we were in a position to start the construction. And as some of you know, there are two ways how we can do the construction. You can do in-house, or you can sublet it to a contractor. And before we talk about this, the design. The Surab had seen some TV show in Holland where he saw the Hare Krishnas. And when he came to Bombay, he got exposed to the Cross Maidan Festival. And then he was brought to Prabhupada, where Prabhupada, when he learned that he was an architect, Prabhupada was very happy, and Prabhupada gave him a paper and pencil and told him to sit in the room next door and do a design of the Bombay temple. Prabhupada already had a concept, what that he wanted. Prabhupada had with him the drawings of the Radha Govindji temple in Jaipur. And he wanted this temple to be Rajasthani style. The different approaches to temple design. You have the Rajasthani style, the South Indian style, the Gujarat style. Prabhupada wanted this temple to be Rajasthani style. And he already had some sketches and pictures of the Radha Govindji temple. So he gave these pictures to Saurabh, and he had him in the room next door, and he had Saurabh work on different sketches. So later on, when we got the NOC, we had submitted our plans. But in order to submit the plans, we needed an Indian architect to present the plans. Saurabh was a foreign national, and he didn't have a license for practicing in India. So we were thinking how to get a local architect. And we met Premnath, and Premnath agreed to be the architect. Premnath would like to believe that this is his design, but the design was 100% Saurabh's and Prabhupada's, because Prabhupada would very minutely oversee and gives Saurabh directions. We had great difficulty in getting these plans approved at one time. So even after the NOC was obtained, when these plans were finally submitted to the municipality, the auditorium was shown as a lecture hall. The guest house was presented as a brahmachari ashram, and the Govinda restaurant was shown as a prasadam hall. And because if we would have presented guest house, restaurant, auditorium, Premnath said, you'll never get the plans approved. So the entire plan was shown to be like to be meant to fulfill the needs of the ashram. So with Premnath's assistance, finally the plans were passed. And as I was saying, there are two ways how we can do a project. You can do it in-house, or you can sublet it to a contractor. But prior to the work starting here, the Vrindavan temple was just completed. The Vrindavan temple was inaugurated on Ram Navami 1975. But that temple was built pretty much in-house. We had a local contractor who did everything. So the work was started in-house. Vijay and others may know more. But the work was going very slow. And Prabhupada had, regarding design, Prabhupada was influenced for the temple design by Radha Govindji temple. And for the guest house, he was influenced by the Hilton Hotel in Nairobi, a small country. Prabhupada was driving to the airport. The Hilton Tower Hotel is still there in Nairobi, because I go to Nairobi regularly. Prabhupada saw that Hilton Hotel in Nairobi, and he liked the round shape. So when Saurabh came, Prabhupada gave him that concept that was further developed by Saurabh. So Prabhupada wasn't happy at the speed the construction was going, and some people were reporting that the construction is not very good quality, and then there was stealing and so on. So then Mr. Dheer, he was a life member, and my memory is that Giraj and I had gone to his house in Bandra. His house was on the Bandra sea face. And he was the vice president of a company called ECC. I think ECC stands for Engineering Construction Company. And that company was a new company, and is a subsidiary of Larsen and Toubro, which has a big name. So we went to Mr. Dheer's house, I remember in the evening, and Dheer said he'd be willing to take charge of this project. And then we believe we brought Dheer to Prabhupada. And then it was decided to give the contract to ECC. And ECC, being a very professional company, made a professional presentation. Of course, Prabhupada knew that the cost is going to be a lot higher. Generally, people do in-house to save 20% money. But Prabhupada was willing to do it because Prabhupada's concept of the Bombay temple was that it should be a very opulent temple. I was told that in Vrindavan, when the construction was going on, Prabhupada wanted everything very cheap. Good, but cheap. But for Bombay, he wanted it ornamented, marble, very attractive. So then it was decided that the contract would be given to ECC. They took up the challenge, and I believe Hari Suri said yesterday that the billing would be, yeah. Well, our local Bombay collection wasn't that high, so we needed to come up with the balance, and that was done by BBT. So that is a summary presentation of construction and design. We'll talk more about it tomorrow. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So it's very difficult for all of us to give such a limited time to
It's okay.
Gopal Krishna Maharaj, but he's going to speak tomorrow at the end of the day, at the conclusion of all of these sessions. So we'll hear from him again tomorrow. So now we're going to hear from Vijay-Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. You guys are getting cheated because we can't really discuss anything about the construction here. We can't really speak too much about the construction here without Sarabi Swami. So we might have a video later on that we might be able to show, which is really an important 7-minute video that explains his realizations after spending a lifetime building temples for Srila Prabhupada. And there's a longer video that you can watch that's 45 minutes, plus I think he did one in Vrindavan a couple of years ago. Plus he was here for the 25th anniversary, so there's one from that as well. This was a no ordinary devotee. He joined Srila Prabhupada here in Bombay, as did my wife and I a couple of years later. I had the great fortune that he was my bhakta leader. Well, not officially, but Giriraj Prabhu and Gopal Krishna were so kind to allow us to move into the temple in January, exactly 43 years ago. And when we were in Giriraj's office, Sarabi Swami was there. They were talking about blueprints. They were going over some ideas. And Sarabi Swami said, he looked at me and he said, well, I'm just a new bhakta, but he said, what did you do before? I said, I was a draftsman. And then Surabi looked at Giriraj and said, he's with me. So right away he took me under his wing. So from day one of my introduction to Krishna consciousness, I was under his wing. And so for the next 3 years, we worked together on some of the plans mostly for the Gurukula in Vrindavan, and then some minor changes for the plans here because they were already in progress. Like Maharaj says, the permit was already granted, the construction company had already been chosen, so things were underway. And it was an enlivening experience to work with someone that was so competent in what they did. He would just take a pen, and when he had an idea for one of the blueprints or a change he wanted to make to exterior treatment of part of the building, he would just draw it freehand. And it was like magic watching him just take a pen and draw arches or domes and chakras. It was just, he was an empowered individual. Of course, he was a great architect materially in his own right back in Holland. He was from Amsterdam. He's from Holland. I'm not sure if he's from Amsterdam. But when he was touched by Srila Prabhupada and empowered by Srila Prabhupada and his devotion and dedication to put this temple, like Maharaj says in the Rajasthani style, it's a very, as you know, beautiful and elegant design, but complex at the same time. And Srila Prabhupada always wanted everything to be really first class. So Maharaj always made, Surabi always made sure that everything was had to be done first class. Had to be marble everywhere, had to be red sandstone on the building. And actually, at that point, I have to mention that it was an interesting construction crew that we had. It's unfortunate because the 4 most important people in the construction crew, like the hands-on, the frontline people, of course, Maharaj here was the most important because he provided the funding. So without the funding, what can you do, you know? So Surabi Swami and Murti Das, Ekanath Prabhu, Nistraigunya Prabhu, who was supposed to be here, and then I wouldn't have to be boring you if he was here, because he could tell you really what happened on the site, because he was the site manager. And Arjuna Prabhu as well. Arjuna was the one who was in charge of the sandstone and the furniture, this furniture. He and I were sent to Rajasthan to get this furniture. And when I first came back here a few days ago after being away for 25 years, I saw the furniture in the lobby and I thought, oh, they must have got new furniture by now. But when I went over and looked more closely, I was happy to see that, no, it's exactly the same. Because that's what Prabhupada wanted. He wanted us to make everything that was going to last for as long as possible, even the furniture. So know that you're inheriting this wonderful building as a memento to Srila Prabhupada's love for Lord Krishna, Sri Radha Rasa Bihari Ji, and that it was just like everything is today. It's a group effort. It's something that we all, as a lot of devotees talk about, there were some struggles, but it was also the happiest time of our life. And even though we only had a little tiny building with 3 open walls, it was still a great honor to be able to work in that building that you built. Thank you so much for that. And it was a greater honor to work with Surabi Swami on the new temple. And one thing I'll leave you with, because I want to pass the mic on, was how Srila Prabhupada and Surabi Swami worked together. And it was, as Gopal Krishna Maharaj said, they were always talking back and forth. But this was a forest of coconut trees. And so Sarabi had this plan and the blueprints, and Srila Prabhupada walked around with him on the land, and he wanted him to put a ribbon around each one of the trees that had to come down. So each one of the trees had to be marked, which one was going to come down. And then he walked around and made sure, with the blueprints with Sarabi, that each one of these trees, and no other one, even if one was 1 foot outside of the footprint of the building, that had to stay. And they had to work, and the bale tree in the courtyard, that had to stay. So that was originally there. And we had to build the complex around that bale tree. And then there was another tree right where the deities sit, right where Radharasa Bihari sit right now, and it was a huge champa tree, and it would make the most amazing collection of champa flowers that the pujaris could go out there with a basket and fill a basket in minutes, then go and make a garland, and it did that every day. And Srila Prabhupada was adamant that we would save that tree. So Sarabi Swami devised a way of digging a way around it and underneath it and trying to protect the root ball with wet sacks, and then turn the tree on its side and drag it out of the hole and replant it in the courtyard, which we did, but apparently it only lasted a couple of years. But the point is, Srila Prabhupada is always so aware and so conscious of all the living entities, even the trees, and he never wanted us to damage or abuse any trees unnecessarily. Thank you.
Thank you, Vijay-Prabhu. So next we're going to hear from Shankar Prabhu, but Gopal Krishna Maharaj wants to have 1 minute to say something before Shankar Prabhu. It's all right. Here.
Hare Krishna. Sora was a genius, and everyone who saw the design while we were constructing, even the construction company, was very, very impressed by the design. If I remember correctly, our construction crew at that time was almost all foreigners. Murthy, who you mentioned, he was an architect, helping Surab in architectural work. Ekanath was more the office man, and the Sugunya was more the on-site supervisor, am I right? Yeah, so Prabhupada was very concerned that we will not be getting cheated. And Prabhupada often said that foreigners are easy to get cheated. And that was Prabhupada's biggest anxiety. So we were asked to check the bills after the construction department would approve it. But even after everyone had done everything, Prabhupada later on gave all the bills to the late Mr. Mota to check. Because Prabhupada was just concerned that we were not being overcharged.
And on this subject of Sorabi, I'm going to take half a minute for this. I lived in the hut with Sorabi Swami, and he had an office in the hut, which was a chittai partition, demarcating a space approximately, I would say, 4 feet by 6 feet in the corner of the hut. And he sat on an old orange crate with a piece of plywood on top of it, and a makeshift table made also of orange crates with some kind of a old piece of wood or masonite on top of that. And that was the site over a period of 2 years when we lived in the hut that Sorabi created the design for this whole magnificent project. And we were living in great austerity. There was a point in time when he was suffering from boils, starting from his forehead and going all the way back, about every 2 inches, had a huge boil, all the way back to his neck. And I had a boil once under my arm, and I was suffering like anything. I couldn't imagine what he was going through, and he did not miss a beat. He was so dedicated to this project. Sorry, Prabhu, now.
Hare Krishna. Okay, so they did the cornerstone, and I was the 8th person to get involved with that. And then Sarabi asked me, because I was a cook, and gardening, and he asked me if I could, because there was no one else around, if I could do the treasury, help him with the treasury for the beginning of the construction. So he would work out everything out with the different people that we bought things from, and I would give them the checks. But I was really wanting to have milk, real cow's milk. And in India, the only way you can really get cow's milk from sweets is rasgullas. Rasgullas cannot be made with buffalo milk. They just don't get squeaky. So I had this plan. Every single company that was dealing with us, cement, steel, whatever, when they came to get their check, they had to bring me a whole box of rasgullas. They wouldn't get their check until they gave me the rasgullas. And then I would squeeze all the sugar out of the rasgullas and pop them in. Ekanath was involved with that too with me. Both of us were doing that. Anyways, it was interesting, you know, because I was watching Sarabi work, you know, especially for the foundation of the temple, you know, the big gigantic things that they built out of concrete and steel. I was watching them build it, and I was kind of like site coordinating a little bit too in the beginning. And the biggest problem was the thieving. I mean, we would count the cement bags. We would have everything all calculated and figured out, and then we went there the next day, there'd be things missing. And so that was a real problem that we faced in the beginning stages of the construction of the temple. It was really difficult. I mean, they were stealing everything. I mean, it was unbelievable. And we had to post guards at night. You know, it was really a wonderful thing. Anyways, one day I wanted to see Srila Prabhupada. So I went up to Sarabi and I said, Sarabi, can I come up with you to see Srila Prabhupada? And he said, okay, you carry all the blueprints. So Sarabi and me went up to see Srila Prabhupada. I was carrying all the blueprints. And as we were getting to the door, Prabhupada was chastising Vijay-Prabhu Maharaj real heavy about not giving the kids in Mayapur cow's milk. He was really adamant about giving the kids cow's milk. And then Jayapataka Swami asked him, he says, I have so many acres of this crop growing and the bugs are eating them. And he asked Prabhupada if he could kill them. And Prabhupada said, yes, if these bugs are going to destroy your crop, you can eliminate them. So I heard that with my own ears. So that was kind of like something that stuck in my consciousness while I was doing all the landscaping and working with Sarabi in the construction. And then Ekanath came and he took over the construction, and then I was still part of the construction crew for the whole building until 75 or 76. And I would just cook every day for everybody, the whole construction crew, wasn't it? I would bring prasadam every day. I would bring all this. We ate like kings. We ate all the maha. I mean, we really had a really good time. I mean, those are really pleasurable moments for me, especially the way we interacted, all of us. I mean, this construction crew we were tight. We were just so together. I mean, we had everything rolling. Sarabi was the hub of the whole wheel, and we were all the spokes, and he just spun, and we all spun with him, and we got it completed. So I'll let Mr. Sethi now talk.
So this is Brij Mohan Prabhu, the son of Mr. Sethi, who was very, very dear servant, disciple, and friend of Srila Prabhupada. They lived in a house in Juhu scheme, and we would often go to their home because they would regularly invite the devotees and would love to feed the devotees prasadam. Really wonderful family. And Srila Prabhupada stayed in the house for how long?
18 days.
Huh?
18 days.
18 days. Srila Prabhupada actually. So their home is a pilgrimage place. And the name of the home back even then was Vrindavan?
Yeah,
So
name given by Prabhupada.
The name given of their home given by Srila Prabhupada was Vrindavan.
Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada. See, when you say loudly, you are filled up with positive energy as you do kirtan loudly, and all the positive energy comes in you. So once again, Srila Prabhupada. First of all, our family is indebted to His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, his disciples, devotees of ISKCON, and the entire family of ISKCON. Let me tell you, I'll give you some introduction how my father got in touch and became a part of this ISKCON family. When there was a program at Cross Maidan, he read it in newspapers that some foreign devotees along with Prabhupada had come to India and they are doing such nice kirtans. So he wanted to visit Prabhupada. At the same time, there was some other religious head also in the city. So my father went in search of Prabhupada. And unknowingly, he went to a different place where Rajneesh Acharya was there. He found that something is wrong. I have come to the wrong place. Then somehow he got the address of Akasha Ganga and he went to meet Prabhupada. As soon as he met Prabhupada, he did pranam. Prabhupada called my father inside the room and he asked him, "What are you doing? What is your daily this thing?" He said, "Maharaj, subere uthta hu." In between I'll speak little Hindi also. In the morning I get up, have a cup of tea, daily routine mein jo karna ho, whatever I do in the daily routine, I do, and then go for work. So Prabhupada said, then what is the difference between you and the pig? Even the pig does the same routine. So my father said, "Maharaj, I have not got the guidance so far from any spiritual leader. Therefore, I have come to you to have your guidance." So Prabhupada asked him, "Where do you stay?" He replied, "We stay in Goregaon." "Okay, my devotees will come to you every Sunday and they will do Nagar Sankirtan and you have to arrange for the feast for them." My father readily agreed for it. We used to have every Sunday Nagar Sankirtan. At that time, if my memory works well, Madhu Visa was there. You know, he used to dance like anything.
And in the entire street, stretch of 4 to 5 kilometers, we used to do Nagar Sankirtan. People used to come out in their balconies and see these Western people dancing, chanting, doing Nagar Sankirtan. That is how my father got associated with this ISKCON. Now, because this is a panel regarding construction, so I would not tell you the other stories. I will straight away go to the construction. My father, me, and my mother, we had come to Juhu Beach. My father told, let us go to Juhu Beach. We came to Juhu Beach, and when we were about to return, my father told, let us visit the temple, have darshan, and then we'll go back to Goregaon. When we came to the temple premises, Hare Krishna land, the things were quite different. The temple was demolished. We were not aware what has happened. And we came to know that in the afternoon, municipal corporation people had come. They demolished the temple, and it was in a very bad state. So, my father, after having discussion with Giriraj Maharaj, Sridhar Swami, he was very much here. He told me, we were into construction at that time, construction of buildings and all that. My father told me, Brij Mohan, you go to the site, get laborers, cement, sand, everything, including the welding machine, because all the structure was demolished. The steel structure was also not in good shape. I arranged for it. After getting all the laborers, sand and everything, when we were about to start the work, he again told me, Brijman, don't waste time. Go back to Goregaon. Get a revolver and a gun. I said, Papa ji, what has happened with you? Why we need gun and a revolver? He said, I am expecting some trouble in the night. So we have to look for the safety. Because he had a license for both. I rushed back, got the revolver, got the gun. He had a revolver in his hand, in his pocket. He gave me the gun. We started by evening, 7 o'clock, 7:30, we started the work. Rebuilding of the temple. The small structure that was demolished with the help of Mr. Matre and Mr. Nair, we started the work. In the middle of the night, some 25 to 30 people had come again to demolish. Those were the goons of Mr. Nair, or you can say Mr. Matre. So my father, he had a very loud voice. He said, how many of you are there? We could see that there were about 20, 25 people. He said, you are a very small bunch of people. Look, I have got a gun and a revolver and I have got 250 cartridges with me. So at least, even I miss some of them, misfire, at least you should be 100, 150 people to come. And one more thing, before reaching where this temple structure is being built, you will have to cross our dead bodies, and without that, you will not be able to again demolish the temple. This happened not because my father had any skill or I was, doing something, only because we were being empowered by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki! So, the construction went on, and these goons also went away. Then, in the middle of the night, after Indra Devta was so happy, he started showering rain. And in the rain, it was very difficult to weld the structure. But anyhow, we could rebuild the temple by 3:30 or 3. And we were very happy to perform Mangal Arati early morning in the same temple. Srila Prabhupada ki! Shri Shri Radhakrishna Bihari ji ki! So that is one part of the story. Now coming to the other part. As you know, when Prabhupada's disciples moved into this land, the things were, I mean to say, I always remember the sacrifice of those disciples of Prabhupada who stayed here in Chatai huts and faced lots and lots of hardships. We have personally seen those hardships. No proper place to stay, no proper arrangement of food, no hygiene. The devotees used to suffer from jaundice. At night when they used to sleep, rats used to come and bite them. And in the morning we used to see them bleeding. And we used to take them to the doctors. So those are the hardships. And believe me, those were very strong devotees. They didn't run away from the project. I think I am forgetting something. When the temple was, I am telling you, reconstructed, Sridhar Maharaj was there and he was sitting in the jeep chanting full night. And then I went once, I just went to Sridhar Maharaj. Maharaj, why are you sitting in jeep? Yeah, at the steering. And as you know, he is a very jovial personality. He said, see, if the goons come, and if they try to do something, I can run away with the jeep. Because he is also known as, a jovial Maharaj. Jolly. So, looking at the conditions where these devotees were living, my father went to Prabhupada. There were few existing buildings, tenanted property. He requested Prabhupada, why can't we have one story on each floor? One floor on the existing building. So Prabhupada readily agreed for it. And then the plans were approved. Extension was done on each building. And one fine day when my father went to meet Prabhupada, Prabhupada said, Mr. Sethi, let us have a look what you have constructed on the existing building. And when we went upstairs, Prabhupada said, Sethi, you have constructed such a nice house for these devotees. Your house is being constructed in Golok Dham. Srila Prabhupada ki. There are many other stories. It's not stories. It is a fact which we have witnessed. That if I get time tomorrow, if given time, I will speak about other stories or facts. So I'll culminate here. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki. Srila. Hare Krishna.
Prabhupada Sati ki, Shri Brij Mahan Sati ki.
Hare Krishna. Brajman Mohit Hare is also involved in organizing the Rath Yatra here. And he is following up on his father's pattern. Regular visitor to the temple, always eager to do service.
Mahamsa Prabhu wants to have just one quick word about Mr. Sethi.
Yes, actually I am coming here after nearly 15 years or so. And yesterday in the morning when I was having breakfast, I suddenly saw Mr. Sethi and as he was walking by I said, Mr. Sethi, here I am. And he came around and he said, I'm Mr. Sethi's son. And I was shocked because he looked exactly like Mr. Sethi. He speaks exactly like Mr. Sethi, and he has a heart which is just like Mr. Sethi. Haribol.
So next we're going to have Narottam Prabhu come and speak. Narottam? You want to? Yes. Reference?
I guess this is fine. This is okay?
Hare Krishna Prabhus, those who are going outside, there are two books available. One is of Loknath Maharaj, which was released yesterday. And there is another book which is written by Vishakha Mataji. So these two books are available. So kindly see that you carry these memories with you and don't worry about the Lakshmi. So you can earn more, but give this time, at least you buy this. These are all wonderful compiled, chronologically storied books. You must have these books for you. As the speakers are having very short time to speak about all the anecdotes, but these books are having complete anecdotes, and you can cherish these memories while you are at ease at your homes or a brahmachari ashram or in a temple. Shetty's story also, Loknath Maharaj is saying, Shetty's stories are also there. So, yes.
Okay. Hare Krishna. I don't really know that much about bullets. But there is a particular type of bullet that I'm a little familiar with, and they're called ISKCON bullets, which was, I guess, the devotee nickname for gulab jamun. So my introduction to Krishna consciousness was through my university a long time ago. And I think in the West, there's basically two kinds of devotees. And one type is the halava type, and one type is the sweet rice type. Simply Wonderful is a little bit on the side, but that's also available. So I was definitely of the halava type. And through the university and, you know, a process of internal growth, I tried to surrender to Srila Prabhupada and to his movement, and I became a devotee in Detroit, Michigan, where the devotees were my friends. The people that had started the temple were my friends. It was a brand new temple, and I came for a visit, and I ended up staying, somewhat similar to Bombay, coming for a short time and ending up staying for a long time. But because they were my friends, they knew that I really liked halava. So they thought, if we teach him how to make halava, he'll probably do a good job. And everybody liked my halava, and then they said, okay, you're the cook. And then I had the good fortune of learning to cook from an expert, a professional Indian cook, who was just fabulous. And so my career in Krishna consciousness was really all the nectar things, cooking, which is really an act of love, serving Krishna, cooking for Krishna, sharing prasad with the devotees. It's really very satisfying because it's directly reciprocal with the devotee family. From cooking, I moved into deity worship. And there was a progression from Detroit to Paris to Vrindavan to Bombay. So a number of GBCs asked me to please come to Bombay. I had good experience in Vrindavan. I was the original head pujari in Vrindavan when the temple opened. I had come just for the festival in 1975 to go to Mayapur and to go to Vrindavan. And when I arrived in Vrindavan, there was a handful of people who were supervising construction, and then we had to populate the temple. So one GBC approached my friend, who was not ready to stay in Vrindavan. Then they approached me, and I felt there was much to be learned in India in terms of tradition and like pakka, cooking, deity worship. So ultimately, I agreed to stay. So 1 year I spent in Vrindavan. I went back to the States, where I'm from. And then when Bombay was almost ready to be opened, a number of GBCs asked me, please, would you come to Bombay? You have good experience. You don't have to think it's your whole life. Just come for 1 year and help set up the program. So in the end, of course, I did come. And I arrived in August, shortly before Janmashtami, and we had a very simple Janmashtami festival, actually in the park that you see right across from the guest house. So that was a kind of public area, and we had our little Janmashtami festival there. Now we can see, 40 years later, the response of the public to this temple. What began as a dream, what began as when Srila Prabhupada first visited Juhu to talked to Sumati Maraji about going to America, he saw this property and he thought, what a nice situation for a temple. He went to America, he conquered America, he returned to India with his disciples and made arrangements to purchase this land. Of course, there's many dramas concerned with that. But as we are seeing the last few days, how popular this temple is, how many people come, they've really taken it to their heart. But in the early days, of course, it was a hut. Then even when we carry the deities, when we, devotees, small humans, carry the Supreme Lord of the universe, who is, you know, planetary systems are emanating from the pores of his skin. Somehow he makes himself small enough and light enough that we can actually carry him to his new home and try to serve as best we can. The service that we're performing, the reciprocation with Krishna, you know, each of us is, you know, we're just very small. And Krishna doesn't really need us, but that affectionate heart, that sweetness, that desire to please and to give and to share, this is what attracts Krishna. And today we serve in the temple. We still have our struggles, but today's service is built on the shoulders of all the servants that came before us. We've heard the stories of the early days where the devotees are sleeping and the rats are biting them and the mosquitoes are biting them and the food is not good. I mean, today we come to Prasadam and there's health food, there's, you know, oat, ragi, idli. I mean, there's every facility, there's air conditioning. We have cars to go to the city. In the early days, it was really a struggle. But you take all those devotees, it's kind of like a piece of cloth that you have the warp, each thread of the warp, each thread of the weft, woven together in such a way to create the whole fabric of the society, of ISKCON society, Srila Prabhupada's family, our family, Vaishnava family. It cannot just be one person. It is actually the combination of many working together. You have a small thread, but you take that thread and you wind it, and it becomes very strong. So, you know, what keeps us bound together is, of course, the desire to please Srila Prabhupada. The deities are the center in the temple, in the fabric of the temple. The deities are the center, offering foodstuffs, offering artik, offering beautiful clothing, rendering service, trying to develop love, which is what all of this is about. Bhakti yoga, the yoga of love and devotion, not the yoga of becoming the big shot, the yoga of becoming the little shot. How to be the littlest of the little, the servant of the servant of the servant, not the master of the master of the master. So we already have our master, who is Srila Prabhupada, who considers himself the lowest of the low, although we know that he is the jewel in our midst. So, okay. It's a pleasure to be here to share with you. It's like looking out at an ocean of little devotional heads from up here. And, you know, each of us can make a difference. It's not about being a big devotee, it's about being part of the fabric. Each one of us has got his purpose. Each of us, we have something to say and our heart to share. And it's a pleasure to be here with all of you. And each of you helps me to remember Srila Prabhupada and his glory. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Narottam Prabhu. Hare Krishna. So our next and final presentation for this. Hare Krishna. All right, so the final presentation of this particular session, stay there, yeah, stay, is going to be a panel. And the panel is only going to be a few of us because it's dealing with kitchen. And the reason I want Narottam to stay, even though he was head pujari, and that was his focus, was caring for the deities in the deity room, but there is a lot of background related to the kitchen that has to do with Narottam. That's why I'm asking him to stay. And Shankar Prabhu is also coming. And if there's anyone else here, any of the Matajis who would like to come, who participated in the kitchen or the cooking, please come and join us. Any of you want to come? Okay, so I'm going to start off because I came in 1972, just after the Yeah, so, Hare Krishna. 1972, right after the Pandal program in which Shri Radharasa Hare had been brought from Akashganga and was established under Srila Prabhupada's directions on their Shringasan under the Pandal, and a wonderful festival took place. So the day after the festival, early in the morning, I arrived, along with Maitahili and Vaikuntanath and Saradia. Vaikuntanath and Saradia were a couple. I joined up with them in New York. Maitahili came, I believe she was in Detroit for some time, and we came together from Detroit. So I had been the head cook in Detroit. And the reason I became the head cook is that when I first came to the temple, Narottam was the head cook. And I was his assistant. And I was the only member of the temple who had a vehicle. And so every weekend I would carry Narottam in my mother's vehicle, actually. It was a minivan. And we would go to the Detroit fruit and vegetable market, and we would purchase boga. Or he would purchase the boga, and I would help carry things from the shops into the vehicle and then into the temple. And so I would also help him in the kitchen. So I learned a great deal from him. Then when we shifted into another better building in Detroit, Narottam became the head pujari. Someone had to take up the kitchen. Well, he had trained me in the kitchen, so I became head cook. And I remained in that position for 6 months. And then I was chosen to come to India. And when I came to India, I was on my way to Mayapur because I had some background in construction and carpentry. But I flew into Mumbai, and I was going to stay here for a week or so and then catch a train up to Mayapur and remain in Mayapur, maybe for the rest of my life. I didn't know, but I was definitely coming here for some time to assist with these new projects in India. So I've soon discovered that the person who was cooking for the deities 6 times a day, and also for all the devotees, and also for prasad distribution, was a hired cook. And I was a little surprised. I didn't imagine that anywhere in Srila Prabhupada's movement there would be a hired cook. That seemed to be very against our principles, contrary to the way Srila Prabhupada wanted his temples to be run. So I came to Giriraj Maharaj, Prabhu at the time, Brahmachari, and I said, I noticed that there is a hired cook in the kitchen, So why don't we have an initiated devotee in the kitchen? So he explained, and this kitchen was in the hut. It was just a little square, 8 feet by 8 feet square room in the hut with the cement floor. And the cement in that hut was very poor quality. And it was broken up in many places. And so all the, gravel and dust was coming up from the floor. And in that kitchen there was one water spigot that came out of the wall, straight out of the wall, about 2 feet up off the floor. There was a kerosene stove, single burner stove that you pump up. That was the main cooking facility. And then there was a bucket stove which for wood, a little charcoal, and then when you're ready to make the chapatis, put some cow dung on top, and you make nice sweet chapatis. And then there were shells for boga. And that was pretty much it. There was no sink, there was no counter to work on, there was no oven, no stove. That was it. It was very austere. And I was watching this hired cook. He was very expert. But he was doing everything sitting on the floor. And I had never done anything sitting on the floor. I mean, everything was standing up. In America, everything is standing up. So I said to Giriraj Prabhu that if you would like, maybe I could get trained by this person, because he wasn't maintaining any standard. He was having the same cloth that was on his leg, which was full of sweat because working in 120 degrees, 35, 37 degree Celsius. And he was using that same cloth that was on his dirty, sweaty leg to wipe off the chapati plate. Tawa. Yeah, and I thought, whoa. And he had a Brahmin thread, so he is a Brahmin, at least in name, but his Brahmin thread was black. And there was a suspicion that whenever he would have a break, he would go into the little outhouse, which is a little ways away, and some of the devotees detected a smell of beedi smoke coming from his breath. So it really wasn't Prabhupada's standard. So anyway, I trained under him, and when I felt I was capable to carry on, so Giriraj actually, to answer my question, he said that we've been trying to get devotees to go in there for the last several months, a couple of 2-3 months, but it's very difficult because it's very austere. But actually I came to India because I wanted to become purified. I realized that my heart needed a great deal of intensive purification if I was going to become some kind of a devotee in this lifetime. So I embraced the opportunity. I trained under this person for about 2 weeks, let him go, and then I became the head cook. So I was cooking there in the hut for 2 years. And so this is why I'm sitting here on the couch talking about the kitchen department, because that was the first 2 years of my time. And then I became then Pujari once the temporary structure that Mr. Sethi built was completed and the deities were transferred from the hut where they were for 6 months or so because the monsoons had come and we didn't have the permit in order to build a structure for them. Eventually that permit came, the structure was built. We needed a pujari, so I became the head pujari. I came out of the kitchen. By that time we had devotees who cooked. And we set up the kitchen behind the deities in that temporary structure. And that's when these Matajis did cooking. Isn't that right? You were cooking behind the deities. So I'm going to now pass the mic, and I wanted Nirottam to sit here just because, not that he's going to say anything, because he's already spoken, and we don't have too much time. But I just wanted to honor him because it was really because of him that I had the opportunity to have this service as a cook, and I'm eternally grateful to him for that. Thank you, Nirottam. So I'm going to hand the mic over to Moksha Lakshmi. You're coming later because you came later. Okay. So 5 minutes.
It's just one story. I mean, Jagat Purusha's given a very accurate description of the cooking facilities in Bombay, but by the time we were there was a little deity kitchen, and in that kitchen there was 2 gas burners and still probably the same, you know, pushy kerosene. So that's all there was. And it was a special day. I think it was Bhakti Siddhanta or Bhakti Vinod's appearance or disappearance day. Unfortunately, I can't remember the details. And we decided we'd make 108 preparations. Now, think, 108 preparations, 2 burners and 1 pushy kerosene thing. It's quite challenging. Now, I have to admit that we did cheat. You know, we'd make Simply Wonderfuls, but we'd make Simply Wonderfuls with kaju and Simply Wonderfuls with kishmish and Simply Wonderfuls with coconut. So, you know, you could get about 10 Simply Wonderfuls right there with different things, or mix the 2 together. But anyway, we managed this 108 preparations. And when the noon arti was offered, it looked really, really beautiful in front of Radharasa Bihari, all these preps. So at the time, Hamsadutta was there. So he said, oh, we have to take these preparations to Srila Prabhupada so he can see what you've done. So he had the big lids from the devotee cooking pots. You know, they're like this big, you know, the round lids that go on the top of cooking pots. So we put the preparations on the lids to take across Hare Krishna land. This was before the construction had started, or there might have been the odd hole, I'm not sure. And so we put them on the lids and we walk across Hare Krishna land to Srila Prabhupada's, in the block of apartments where Srila Prabhupada lived. And then we realized that the lids were wider than the stairwell. So the stairwell's this big, and the cooking pot lids are this big. So it was, again, another really big challenge, which I think in those days, everything we did in Bombay was really, really challenging. So somehow, I don't know how we did it. Savan Mongol, who's here, was with me, but she's not present right now. Somehow, we manipulated these cooking the lids, the prasadam falling this way, that way. And by a miracle, we got them up to Srila Prabhupada's room. So it's all taken into Srila Prabhupada's room. And then Prabhupada sent the message, and here, this is the important bit. This movement is nothing without its feasts. So that was the message. And that is my cooking story in Bombay.
So Mother Ambika was there in the early days, and she was involved both in cooking as well as in pujari work. So we're going to ask her to speak.
Hare Krishna. So that second kitchen was definitely an improvement on the hut. However, I have to mention that it did have rats. We used to call them fat cat rats because they were so big and they would come in the night. Anyway, as well as on top of those gas burners, we actually managed to acquire a little oven that you sat on the gas. So we could then make cookies. And that was really nice because I could make cookies and take them up and put them on Srila Prabhupada's desk so that he could give them out to the guests and the life members and the devotees. Anyway, I have a little bit of a sad story to tell. One day I was asked to cook Srila Prabhupada's lunch, and because Daiva Shakti couldn't do it, she was off the altar. So it happened to be a Ekadasi. One of my services was to make day sweets for the deities. So each day I'd make enough, aside from Mangalartik, which we had milk sweets, through the rest of the day, these sweets would be offered on the deity's plate. So I'd make enough that would last through the day. Anyway, I had made banana malpura in sugar water, taught to me by Gandiva. She taught me how to make them. And I was thinking, oh, it's Ekadasi, I've got to cut up all those vegetables. And Srila Prabhupada only allowed 1 hour for us to cook. We couldn't spend hours and hours. So I was thinking, oh my gosh. And also, I was given the message, he wants shukta. Oh my gosh, I'd never tasted shukta. I quickly ran around and tried to find, what's shukta? How do you cook it? So I'm afraid I probably didn't do a very good job at all on my shukta. Anyway, I cooked for Srila Prabhupada, and then I thought, oh, I'll take up the day suite because that'll save time, you know. So I sent in the plate to Srila Prabhupada, including the day suite. And then Hare Prabhu, after some time, came out and said, oh, Srila Prabhupada wants some more of the day suite. At that point, I just about dropped dead. I said to Hare Sori, oh, it's a grain! I've broken Prabhupada's courtesy. So Hare Sori had no mercy. He just turned around and went straight in and told Srila Prabhupada. I ran back to the Brahmacharya ashram, packed my trunk, because I thought, my spiritual life is finished. And I sat on my trunk all afternoon in total mortification. Anyway, by the evening, no message had come that I'd been thrown out. So I kind of wandered, you know, nervously went across to ask Hare Sori, what did Srila Prabhupada say? He said, he didn't say a word. So he must have realized how mortified and how foolish I felt for breaking Ekadasi of my spiritual master. Of course, we know Srila Prabhupada is a pure devotee. He doesn't have to follow Ekadasi, but for me, it was a very big mistake and I felt very terrible. Hare Krishna.
I just wanted to take this opportunity to ask Hare Prabhu if you feel that on Srila Prabhupada's behalf you might be able to forgive her.
All glory to Srila Prabhupada. So I arrived in Bombay right after the Mayapur festival in '74. And I don't know, Shantilal, he was one of the cooks that was in the kitchen. He was one of the hired cooks. Anyways, as time was going on, I learned how to make Mangal Artik sweets. So I started making Mangal Artik sweets. And Prabhupada used to take them every morning. So on one morning, on a morning walk, I gave Prabhupada his flour. And then he told me, he said, you make the Mangal Artik sweets? I said, yes. He says, saffron sweet rice is the king of sweet rice. I said, cool. So that was that. And then on one day, this is in '75, I was working in the kitchen. So Prabhupada was coming out in the morning walk. So I gave him his flour. And then he said, how much ghee are you using? I said, Srila Prabhupada, we're cooking 6 offerings. We're cooking breakfast and lunch for the devotees, and we're using 1 kilo of ghee. And Prabhupada said, that's too much. So we cut it. We cut it almost to half. So a few days later, Prabhupada came out on the morning walk again, and he said, so how much ghee are you using? I said, we're using about 1/2 kilo a day. And Prabhupada said, you don't know how to cook. And then I told the sannyasi that story, and he said, Prabhupada was just playing with you. You know, anyways, then I think at '75, Bhakti Siddhanta's appearance day. We made 108 preparations, and I made 98 of the 108 preparations. Anyways, Gopal Krishna comes up to me, and he says, Shankadas, you made most of these preparations. You have to go up and tell Srila Prabhupada what you made. So I went up into Prabhupada's quarters, and he was sitting there, and there was this table, a little big table, and there was 108 bowls of all the preparations. Navya Gindra was in the back with a few other brahmacharis. So I sat in front of Srila Prabhupada, and so Prabhupada looked at everything, and he looked at me, and he said, what's this? So I told him what it was, and he ate it. He said, what's this? I told him what it was, and he ate it. I said, what's this? I told him what it was, and he ate it. The 5th time he said, what's this? I told him what it was, and he ate it. And I don't remember what he said in response to that. You know, Navya Gindra Maharaj told me he didn't say anything. But I know he said something, but I can't remember what it was. But anyways, I did that. And then I guess that's kind of like my debut in the kitchen, you know, and then I was cooking after Raj Bhogs, and I was bringing them to the construction office, you know. I would take all the maha and bring it to the construction office, so we all were eating pretty good in the construction office, so. Anyways, that's my story.
So before Narottam speaks, I just wanted to mention that Narottam actually was famous as the best cook all over America. We had, at that point in time in 1972, about 35 temples around the country. Every devotee in the movement knew that Narottam Sunday feasts were the best.
Don't believe everything you hear. But I could tell you one story.
So, while Narottam is thinking what to say, I just wanted you all to know and be aware of how important this panel is, because Srila Prabhupada said that our movement is the kitchen religion.
In 1976, when Srila Prabhupada came to Washington, D.C., I had made a fruit plate for Srila Prabhupada to honor at the airport. And I was living in Detroit at the time. I was on a break from Vrindavan, and I spent about 6 months in D.C. and 6 months in Detroit. When Srila Prabhupada came to Washington, D.C., they asked me to come there and help cook and just be present. And so the devotees were getting milk directly from the farm. It means unboiled milk, raw milk directly from the farm, which is exactly the kind of milk you want to make Bengali sweets. You want cow's milk, and you want not pasteurized, homogenized, you want really milk directly from the cow. So when I saw the milk, I thought, oh, I'll make rasgulla for Srila Prabhupada. And the devotee said, no, 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 you can't make rasgulla from that milk. It doesn't work. I said, well, I'll try my best, because when I had gone to Calcutta, the second time I went to Calcutta, I made friends with the cooks in the sweet shops, and I would watch. I went to 3 different sweet shops and learned how they made the sweets with the gumcha-wearing, beady-smoking cooks. Not in the front room where the bosses were, but just in the back door where the cooks were. So I made rasgulla to the best of my ability, and after Prabhupada settled himself into the temple and was basically talking with the GBC, sannyasis, all the important devotees were gathered there. And I brought in the rasgullas, and then Srila Prabhupada, as his habit, he starts distributing prasad to the devotees. He hands a rasgulla to this Maharaj, to this GBC, like this. And there was not that many, and I was just watching prasadam distribution. So at one point I said, Srila Prabhupada, you're not going to give all the rasgullas away and not have any for yourself, are you? Because of course I was attached that I wanted Srila Prabhupada to at least have one. He said, I am not such a fool that I will give all the rasgulla away. So Srila Prabhupada put one in his mouth. He said, oh, this rasgulla is very good. Then I said, but Srila Prabhupada, they're not as good as K.C. Das, are they? K.C. Das is a famous Bengali sweet shop. There's also one in Bangalore. And so many times in lectures, Prabhupada mentions K.C. Das. So I said, but Srila Prabhupada, they're not as good as K.C. Das. And then he said, but in New Vrindavan, they make better than K.C. Das. And Srila Prabhupada was coming from New Vrindavan. As I remember, before he came to Washington, D.C., he had been in New Vrindavan. And maybe our Radhanath Maharaj, maybe he made those rasgulla, I'm not sure. But New Vrindavan was really famous for the milk sweets. So I would just like to say also, of course, I didn't have much to do with the devotee kitchen, but the deity department was like a temple unto itself, with all the various services for the deities as well as cooking. So we had a separate kitchen where all the pujaris would help cook. So there was, of course, the pujari department is not me. Pujari department is many devotees. Raghupati Raghav, Ramranjan, who are both here. Siddharth, who is Prabhu then, is a Maharaj now. He was there. It means all of us helped in the kitchen. So as I was saying before, you know, devotional service, especially in a temple like this, it means many, many, many people working together. Some of those people are here with us today. Some of those people are engaged in service or busy other places. Many of those people may have passed away. So it's a collective service, and none of that effort goes unrecognized and appreciated. And one other point I will make is, like in the early days, of course, people would come to the temple, but not in the numbers that they come now. Slowly, slowly over time, people develop faith in a deity, people from the neighborhood and from the city, and everything expands. So we can see a bit what is the result of service over time, devotion over time. So I was very concerned, how will we maintain the deities? How will we you know, afford all making outfits and cooking nicely and opulently? How will this go on? How can we, you know, maintain this? So there were various suggestions. So one of the suggestions was to have a window, which we have in the temple room, where we can distribute prasad, where people can make donations. So at the time, of course, in the beginning, I didn't dress the deities. When I first came, I just felt I'm the facilitator. There's somebody to take care of Gaur Nitai, there's devotees to take care of Radha and Krishna, big and small, devotees to take care of Sita Ram, and I was a facilitator. I was there to ensure that everybody had what they needed when they needed it for their service. But one of the things I worked on was how to develop the whole platform of deity worship. So I decided that there should be some kind of sweet, just like in Tirupati, there's a famous bundi ladu. So everybody knows when you go to Tirupati, you get the bundi ladu. When you go to see Govindaji in Jaipur, there's also bundi ladu. So I thought, we'll make besan ladu. So every day I would go in the kitchen and I would make the besan ladu. And then it would be available. We would have a devotee posted in that window that people could come and we could distribute prasad. So, as Jagat Purush pointed out, prasadam is a very important weapon in our society, and it's one of the main ways we interact with the outside world. We're always famous, Hare Krishnas are famous for prasadam. It helps a lot in the preaching. It keeps the army of devotees satisfied and happy. But we should also remember that we're servants, we're not Krishna. So controlling the ghee and, you know, we cannot eat like God. We have to eat simply and maintain our health. But, so that's my experience of the kitchen, the deity kitchen, not the devotee kitchen, and the kitchen religion. And maybe it's time for prasadam.
So thank you so much, Prabhus, Matajis, for coming for this session, our second session of this temple Katha, Prabhupada Katha.
An announcement about book.
Oh, at 2 o'clock, yes. So Yadavara's movie is being shown in the auditorium at 2 o'clock. And we will reconvene at the outside, at the lawn, in the stage of the lawn, for the third session. That will be at 4 o'clock. And also sometime between now and 4 o'clock will be prasadam. Okay.
Maharaj will be signing this right now.
Okay. And then as you leave, Prabhus, before you go, you will see as you depart this entranceway, there's a table with books. Mother Vishaka has written a wonderful book that you should stop and see and acquire if you can, and also Lokanath Swami's book, which tells the entire history of this Mumbai project. So please take notice of that and pick a copy if you can. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki.
That's a different story.
That's a different story.
That's a different. That was
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare